Hey guys, so when reading this chapter and hearing All Might basically lay out the plan of attack and just the overall strategy of how to approach fighting All for One, the League of Villains, Shigaraki, all that, one thing that constantly stuck in my mind is All Might is still seriously underestimating All for One yet again. Like that's kind of the first thing that popped in my head because even assuming they succeed in separating him from Shigaraki, even if they succeed in holding back the League of Villains, and even if Aoyama like eventually comes around and does prove to hold the key piece of information to turn the tide, as we see in this chapter, and just make it the perfectly executed plan that All Might is hyping it up as. I still feel All Might is making a huge mistake by underestimating All for One and kind of just discounting him as kind of the weaker of the two right now. Like in fact, it's kind of funny, but in a lot of ways, like the way he's talking about All for One and Shigaraki in this chapter, he's kind of basically making the reverse of the exact same mistake he made like during the Hideout arc, where he underestimated Shigaraki and placed more importance on All for One. And if you were like, and the thing is, if All Might were taking this seriously, he would be treating both of them as equal threats, even if it is true that one is like on a technical level stronger than the other. Like it doesn't make the other any less of a strong piece on the board. Like this in this tactical game of chess, and I worry where this is going to lead All Might because, again, just by pretty much assuming that All for One is the weaker of the two threats, it's just a mistake. It is. Now, with that said, let's talk about Aoyama and Aizawa and the whole scene, and Aizawa and his whole scene with Aoyama, because this is honestly a very vulnerable moment for Aoyama, but it's a very revealing one as well, in the sense where time and again Horikoshi has put emphasis on the hero's first leap, let's call it. That moment where the person's body and emotions react in the heat of the moment, not thinking about what happens to them, only to the people they're trying to save. But what Aoyama basically admits to himself and Aizawa in this chapter is he was never even able to take that leap to begin with. He was just a boy with a fancy quirk who was basically consumed but by pretty much the fear of what would happen to him or his family, and seeing the others like offer that hand to him only made him realize that more and more, just caused him to fall even deeper into that pit of doubt and fear that when, like, the one thing he's worried about of all else right now is when the time comes, as he said, when the time came, he wouldn't be able to make that same, the same leap that the others have had up to this point. And honestly, this is why, to me, Aizawa is the absolute GOAT teacher of MHA. Like, don't get me wrong, the man has faults beyond belief, but despite all that, but despite that, even now, after all that's happened, he not only still wants to help his student, but he knows the only way to do that, and for Aoyama to move forward is for Aizawa to kind of force Aoyama to take that first necessary step as a hero, to overcome those doubts, yet at the same time, ironically, even though he was using it as a motivator, what Aizawa was saying about Aoyama's sins and him needing to live with them wasn't wrong either. He is still going to have a lot to make up for, but this is a good start. This is where he can start, finally showing what he truly is capable of as a hero, and it's about whether, and right now it's about whether or not Aoyama. It's not about whether or not he's a hero, villain, whatever. It's about whether or not Aoyama has the will, is the will and the strength of will in order to even do so when the moment calls. In order to do those things when the moment calls for it, but he is still saying he can make that first step as long as he has the will to do so, and I love that. And For the longest time, I was wondering where the hell Shinzo was, and bam, he makes his appearance at the end of the chapter. Which, yeah, narratively, now that we've gotten the reveal of Aoyama being the spy and all that, it when you look at Aoyama's current emotional state, it does make sense for him to appear now, since he is probably the one who can support and help Aoyama the most. Like, you can definitely see that Aizawa is forming his own little group together in order to help battle All for One and Shigaraki, and Aizawa and Aoyama, and Shinzo and Aoyama are part of that group. But despite that, I do, even though it works narratively in this way, I do still think there was a bit of a missed opportunity to not having Shinzo around during the whole time that Class A had confronted Izuku. Like, don't get me wrong, I still like that whole fight very much, and it was a very nice, very well, a very good way to handle, like, how to bring Izuku back. But it still felt a little bit empty without Shinzo there, considering he was like that Shinzo was kind of one of the very first people that Izuku saved when he came to UA. Getting back to the meeting in the hospital, though, we see Ragdoll get reintroduced, and her just kind of giving her own little input on the whole situation. And I do like how Horikoshi is reinforcing the idea that, yeah, a lot of what's going on now, a lot of what's happening on the villain side, was in a lot of ways made possible because Ragdoll was captured and her quirk was extracted. Like, everything, you could really make the argument that everything that is happening now is pretty much all thanks to what happened like during the Forest training arc, which I personally feel is important, because I remember there were a couple people at the time who weren't really, I guess they weren't necessarily not fans of it, but just kind of wrote it off as like a filler or intermediary arc happening in between like the last major arc and the next major arc, but or in this case was leading to the Hideout Raid. But this is one of those little details that really makes me appreciate that arc more, because it wasn't just an arc that was building up to the Hideout Raid arc. It was an arc that would have overarching effects in the grand scheme of the story, with Ragdoll being captured and whatnot. Also, I don't know if it was an artistic choice on Horikoshi's part or a mistake, but when you see Aizawa and Aoyama against that blank void backdrop and whatnot, Aoyama's entire midsection was cut off. Again, I'm assuming it was an artistic choice, but if so, it is a weird one, because I'm not gonna lie, just pretty much seeing Aoyama with his entire midsection cut off, that shit's kind of hilarious. I'm not gonna lie, like I kind of had a little bit of I kind of couldn't help but chuckle at that whole thing. Like, really, you're doing that? And of course, through the other thing though is that through this meeting they are more or less kind of hyping up the rematch between Shoto and Toya, the Todoroki brothers, and which, don't get me wrong, I'm definitely hyped to see Izuku and presumably Class 1A fight Shigaraki. But honestly, if you were to ask me as to which one I'm more emotionally invested in, which fight I want to see happen more, it is the Shoto versus Toya fight, because that one honestly just feels like it has a lot more going for it right now. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Analyst, Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, the subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight Venom, signing off. Later, everyone.